I learned that if I performed and pleased, that's where people pleasing can come from. I got rewarded. And then I went into elementary school and got rewarded for people pleasing, and then grad school, and then PhD school, and then at work, we really get rewarded for all these services. So before you know it, you're living past capacity, where your nervous system says, right here, Jules, this is your stop point. I say, forget that. I've got to do this, because if I don't go above and beyond, if I don't please, I'm going to get fired. We're going to starve to death. I'll be homeless. I mean, the spiral, starts. So it really takes some unlearning and some actual courage. I celebrate these women that are working with me that are brave enough to look at their lives and discern and even dissect and deconstruct how they've built things and rebuild it back into a place that really feels like it's not past capacity.
Is something standing between you and your happiness? It was for me. I had to face my depression and the constant negative self-talk. Therapy helped me realize I deserve to be happy. That's why this podcast is called I Choose Health, because I made the choice to heal, and I want to share that with you. As a gift to you, we've partnered with BetterHelp as our sponsor to help you start your own healing journey. We all face moments when life feels overwhelming, whether it's stress, anxiety, or just feeling stuck. Talking to someone can make a real difference. And that's where our sponsor, BetterHelp, comes in. BetterHelp offers professional online therapy that's convenient, affordable, and entirely on your schedule. You can connect with a licensed therapist by video, phone, or even chat, whatever works best for you. Let our sponsor, BetterHelp, support you on your journey to better mental health. You can get 10% off your first month by going to betterhelp.com/iChooseHealth. That's betterhelp.com/iChooseHealth for 10% off your first month. Take the first step toward feeling better today.
As a teenager, I decided to live better, so I gave up the meat, eggs, and cheddar. At 20 and 30, I wanted more, so I strengthened my mind and my core. Living a life that is healthier and wealthier because I choose health.
Welcome back to the I Choose Health podcast. I'm your host, Stefan Lessie. Ladies, if you're feeling burnt out, our next guest says it's not your fault. And there's just so many expectations, so many obligations, appointments that you're expected to fulfill on a day-to-day, week to week, month to month, personal obligations. All these things, have a bearing on one's physical health, mental health. And so, I really am excited to have on the show today, Dr. Julie Merriman. So Dr. Julie Merriman, welcome to the I Choose Health podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
No, same. And, I've been thinking about the topic of burnout, especially, even though I may not be the subject of this discussion, but, as a dad, as a person who is running a personal training business, is also doing work for the city as a recreation specialist, running my podcast. I'm also editing another person's podcast. So I'm doing quite a bit. So when it comes to especially women and burnout, what is the science saying that is helpful to women in terms of, beginning that path of self-care, and what should be those first steps if they want to begin that journey of self-care?
Right. Well, and first, I just want to acknowledge what all you're doing, sweetie. That's a lot. You've got a lot going on. Plus, you have precious children that you're taking care of too. And I just want to hold space and acknowledge that. But certainly, it's not a straight path. The burnout piece, to recognize and admit that it's happening. My first book was about my crash and burn and my path back, and that's really where I start. The symptomology is going to be different for everyone, but what happens is, especially, and I'm a woman, so I'm going to come from a woman's perspective, but we put ourselves in a pressure cooker, if you will. We so often place our value based on our performance. So we're always taking care of others. Our brain is scanning for other people's needs before they even know they have it. We will swallow
Mm-hmm.
our truth to keep the peace. We will push through exhaustion because we overfunction. We said we do something, so by God, we better get it done, because somehow that means we're less for some reason. And this is a chronic state of living on a cocktail of adrenaline and cortisol. Our brain, the frontal cortex, when we're very escalated, when our nervous system is overstimulated, maybe we're reacting. Not that I've ever done that, but maybe we're reacting to something. Our our we we have lived on this adrenaline and cortisol cocktail for so long that that's become our normal. We don't even realize that we're very dysregulated and that we're braced, right? We're just braced trying to get through stuff. So it really can come as a very big surprise when a woman realized something doesn't feel right. I remember I
Mm-hmm.
was about 43. I walked off a stage. I'm a professor. I've been a clinician for 30 years. I've always it's publish or perish, right? So I've always been out presenting and whatever, but I had really worked hard for this keynote that I had been hired to do. I mean, I prepared for months, did it, standing ovation. I walk off the stage, and Stefan, I felt numb. I didn't even feel like there was no, like I owned what was going on with the audience. I felt numb. And that's when I asked myself, what is going on with me? And that's where I
Mm-hmm.
really learned about the constructs of burnout and compassion fatigue, because those really clash together and can really impact how we live our lives. So if she's feeling numb, if she's feeling like she just can't rest, if even in my new book is Are We Gonna Have Sex or What? And I kind of go into this where your partner touches you and you just brace like, my God, one more thing on my to-do list. I just don't have it. Those are some things to start being curious about, not
Uh-huh.
blaming or shaming, but just being curious. What's going on with me?
Mm. Yeah, and that's really interesting. And, being so I now live in New York City, and I originally am from Barbados in the islands. So I'm curious to know if you've done any studies on or looked at any studies in regards to burnout as it compares to other countries, because there's this idea of this hustle and bustle in the West, right? You have to keep going, you have to keep pushing. Now, even though I left the islands as a teenager, I was 15 when I left, there was still this sense that like things were a little bit more laid back. Like, you still had to work hard, obviously, um, but like it seemed like there's just so many more demands within this capitalistic society. I have a client of mine who she's American, but her husband he is from somewhere in the Eastern European region. I'm forgetting the country right now, but when he first moved here, he had a hard time adapting to just the demands of American society, but particularly like the capitalism of New York City itself.
Yeah.
And if you know anything about how New York City is, it's a real rat race. So, have you seen any studies that have shown where uh, across countries, across the world, where it's been an easier time for women in different countries. And, obviously, women have taken up the majority of burdens, throughout society. But have you seen that
Yeah.
change from country to country?
Yeah, and that's a really interesting question. I have two things. Qualitatively, I have some information, just my own lived experience. I lived in the Virgin Islands for a while in the early 90s, and it was a stark, because I was born and raised in Fort Worth, Texas, so I'm I'm a Texan through
Uh-huh,
and through. So I arrive in St. Croix, and
uh-huh,
I mean that's the Virgin Island we lived on, and it's such a different vibe just getting my cable scheduled where, they were
uh-huh,
like, we'll get there when we get there. And they did, but it
uh-huh,
was such a healthier approach to you're not in this pressure cooker
uh-huh,
cooking yourself, pushing yourself. completely, and this causes us to become very disembodied. We haven't lived in our bodies. The ladies I work hadn't lived with their bodies in probably 30 years. They're these floating heads of competence, really trying to get through stuff instead of being embodied. But my experience in St. Croix was these people were very embodied and enjoying life and took the time and space to breathe, which is a very healthy thing for our nervous system. Now, I just got back from New York City. Actually, I was out there for some TV interviews and podcast interviews. And that was my first experience live in New York City. And it is, I mean, I could just feel my body just, you can't even walk out onto the sideway from the hotel room without running into people. It was just so elevated. I mean, my nervous system did not calm back down. I live on a ranch in Texas. So until I got back out here to the ranch and I could breathe again. So just that's a qualitative experience. Yes, that's going to impact especially eminently how you are experiencing life and the system you're in. Now, I've got some tips for folks how we can work around that. But I have seen studies as I was working on some of my publications that are peer-reviewed publications in some of the counseling journals. I've looked at stuff from Israel and stuff from not so much stuff from islands, but what I was looking at was mental health workers and how, because I'm a therapist, mental health workers and how burnout and compassion fatigue had hit them. And so there is some documented things in Israel and I want to say China. I think it's Israel and China were the two studies I was looking at. But those are pretty hustle bustle kind of cultures as well. So they were having the same outcomes as we were having here in the U.S. But it would be interesting to see what it looks like from the islands and places that are so much more evolved when it comes to just living in your body and being.
Well, I do think that with the impact of like globalization, that other countries are going to start becoming like having like women in other countries are going to have a similar impact. Because I do think that the rest of the world feels the pressure to kind of come up to America's standard or to come up to the West standard. I'm even seeing that, like, from my country in Barbados, where I saw just this week that we're going to start drilling for oil. And that made me a little bit concerned because just if you know anything about, I mean, you're from Texas, so you know some things about the oil history there. So, so that made me a little bit concerned. But I do think that that impact of globalization is having that impact of making other people feel like they need to catch up, right?
Yeah.
And you see that in social media as well.
And that's so sad because really it's going backwards. 'Cause
Well,
I spend so much time with my ladies trying to help them release all this pressure, release all these expectations, and try to find themselves. And I'm also a yoga therapist and I'm very much a somatic therapist. So, and as I told you, I've taught group exercise for years and years. So that's, but I think that moving our bodies are very important. And my research in the yoga therapist world really leads back to chakras, right? Which is a 5,000-year-old tradition. This is not some woo-woo drop out of the sky from nowhere. The Eastern traditions are very grounded in some very healthy things. And then when you look at the nervous system research, that's, and it's good. I like the nervous system research, but if I'm talking from my neuroscientist hat, I'm talking about nervous system stuff, mapping the vagus nerve through one's body on an anatomy chart, which looks like spaghetti to me. But if I'm talking from my yoga therapist tradition, I'm talking about chakras, the energy centers going through your body. And they're the same thing. They map through the same areas of our body. But I've found that if I can get my ladies talking, understanding which energy centers are feeling tight or where she's feeling anxiety, it helps her to, as we start to get her re-embodied, it helps her to start to relearn her body. So many people, as I said, these floating heads of competence, they are running from their body because that's where we feel things. That's where life
Mhm.
happens in our body. And they try to think their way through things instead of just being present and feeling what we need to feel. And some of those things suck. I mean, don't get me wrong. It feels horrible to be really PO'd, or it feels horrible, to be
Mhm.
grieving or whatever it might be, but it's eminently important that we sit with it and feel it so we can get through it. And I firmly believe the issues are in our tissues. Our body holds memories that we have to help to express, energies that we have to move through. So I use a lot of bioenergetic, and I've got
Mhm.
a punching bag. I've got a barn that is my exercise barn, like a gym,
Mhm.
but it's out there. And I've got a punching bag set out there, and I'll have ladies go out there and just beat the thunder out of that as they're voicing what's bothering them, trying to move some
Mm.
energy. Um, and that's what happens with burnout. We
Yeah.
think we can go and go and go and ignore stuff, and we can't. And you've probably seen this, that dadgum wellness industry
Mhm.
that's selling you self-care and blaming you.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you feel bad. Well, then you're doing this wrong. Go
Mhm.
go get a
Yeah.
massage. And she hasn't lived in her body in 30 years. She doesn't anymore feel that massage than a man in the moon. So it's very important to get folks re-embodied where we can feel. Um, that's a big part of what I do with my burnout clients. They don't like it.
That,
They
yeah.
don't like it.
That example of, your clients hitting the punching bag, it reminded me of a client of mine that I had like a year ago, maybe a little bit more than a year ago, but I gave her one of those slam balls. And so we were doing one of those core movements where we're just slamming it down, and picking it back up. And I told her, say, like, just put all your aggression, all your anger into that ball, just, slam it down. And uh, whatever that is that you're feeling, just slam it.
Good.
And as she's doing it, she starts, and I'm gonna say something that I can't repeat on air, but she said that, and then she said B word, right? And I was like,
Uh-huh.
oh, right. And so that was like, I said, all right, cool. I'm glad you got all that out. You mind me asking who is the B you were talking about? And so she was talking about her boss, so, right? And so I guess she had whatever impact she was having to work on her, just the stress from that relationship, that co-working relationship. But yeah, I mean, obviously, women are experiencing a lot of burnout from the workplace to home to personal
Oh,
stuff. And I'm thinking
yeah.
about the fact that, like, New York City, like, you're dealing with work stress, you're dealing with, like, financial stress, you're dealing with, people who may be in relationships that are, turbulent, either on the physical abuse side of things, the emotional abuse side of things. So there's just so much. And I know that uh, the women outside of New York going through similar things, but I'm just thinking of all of these things just adding up, one on top of the other.
Oh, absolutely. And then you walk out into a world that is so full of hustle and bustle. It's very hard to get back to nature and get yourself grounded. I mean, walking barefoot, and I'll do it. I'm pointing out my window to my grass out there. I
Mhm.
will walk to go walk barefoot on grass and actually get grounded. There's electrical currents that we get that physically impact our body. And I would think as a personal trainer, in fact, I talked, one of the colleges I worked at when I was a dean, we talked about adding some mental health components to the physical of the guys that were becoming physical trainers,
Mhm.
because somatically you're moving that body, you're going to get to some emotion because you just are.
Mhm.
And it's fine, but to know what to do with that, because it can be kind of like, I don't know what to do with that emotion this lady is bringing to me. But to have some
Mhm.
skill, to hold space and just witness whatever came forward. But that doesn't surprise me that she came to some emotion and some good release. I mean, that
Mhm. Yeah.
is healthy. It's probably one of the first times she had re-embodied for some time.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know that through that process of somatotherapy, like, what are the benefits of combining things like somatotherapy, cognitive therapy, and maybe even logotherapy? I know logotherapy is one of the newer. Is somatotherapy newer than logotherapy? I don't know, like, in terms of
Some
his history.
Yeah. Now,
Mhm.
actually, somatic therapy and nervous system work has been around since the turn of the century. Poor Hayes got all the credit, but it was Levine and Riken, long time ago that and Lowen. Anyway, but those came around first. These newer therapies build on that. And really, as a therapist, I mean, as a professor, I teach therapy, the theory class, and my students get so confused because they're all so dadgum similar with just a little twist,
Mm.
over this way. So, and that really started with Freud and some of those early guys back at the turn of the century. But Adler and the guy, Gestalt therapy guy, his name is leaving me. Anyway, they kind of added some things that we really build upon today. Freud kind of went he had some good stuff. Then he went crazy with
Right.
all the, oh, you just want to sleep with your mama. It's like, no,
Yeah.
that's not
Yeah.
what I want. But he had some good foundations for us. And when you
Yeah.
look at
Yeah.
his history, and I know this is an aside, but he had such a weird childhood. It's little wonder
Mhm.
that he came up with the weird theories that he came up with
Oh, yeah.
later.
Yeah. I remember the first time I heard that theory from Freud, I was just like, when did I ever think about sleeping with my mama? And my mom is probably going to be weirded out by this because she does watch the podcast. So, um, but yeah, it's a weird theory. Um, a couple of months ago, I had Dr. Amy Beheimer on, and so she particularly focuses on autoimmune diseases. And I was asking her why it seemed that women on a whole, and I think even like when it comes to looking at the data, women are way more likely to develop autoimmune diseases. And so her explanation, she cited Dr. Gabor Mate, and he was saying
Yeah,
that historically, you go back thousands and thousands of years, women have been having to deal with raising societies and raising families uh, and so do you see a similar connection between that? And I imagine that some of the clients that you work with also have, autoimmune diseases. Do you see a similar connection between that and
com-
burnout as well?
completely. Completely. In fact, I'm a breast cancer survivor myself that came about in the midst of all my burnout stuff. We as women, we don't. What we do, this is my theory. We say that myth you can't pour from an empty cup is not true. We do it all the
Mm.
time until we become the empty cup. So we are serving and taking care of and pushing through when we have no energy, or maybe we are horribly sick. We have some sort of something going on that we're not taking
Uh-huh.
care of ourselves because we're serving others. So it it is not at all surprising that it's skewed towards women really being impacted by the immune suppression that occurs when we're very dysregulated. I mean, I can remember thinking it. Oh my God, I feel terrible. What's going on in my stomach? I don't have time to deal with it. I have 3 clients to see. Got to pick Cliff up at football practice, and Blake needs a new pair of track shoes. Oh,
Mhm.
what about dinner? You're just running, running,
Mm.
running. Our
Yeah.
hormones are, and I'm not talking just about the estrogen and stuff. I'm talking about as I said, cortisol and adrenaline. We stack ourselves with really bad hormones. And then we're not giving ourselves time to metabolize all that, to let that stress cycle stop. So there's this allostatic load of years of not allowing ourselves to take care of ourselves. And often women, and we've got to work through this, reaching down to my solar plexus area, women
Uh-huh.
often um, they feel guilty or shame for stopping to put themselves into the equation. Just like a woman telling you, "Oh, I
Mhm.
don't have time to work out." That's the very thing you need to do so that you
Uh-huh.
can do these other things in a more refined manner. When we take care of ourselves, and I don't mean a bubble bath. Bubble bath ain't gonna get it. I'm talking about going to work out. I'm talking
Mhm.
about making sure you eat 3 meals a day. Because you'd be surprised they
Yeah.
don't do that. But, saying what you mean, clearing that throat chakra and showing up authentically, having the courage to say no, which can be terrifying for some women. All those things add up to us showing up even better for our loved ones. It doesn't mean we don't care for them. It means we show up more complete when we put ourselves in that equation. But women don't do that. And they end up, in fact, a lot of my gals I'm working with, because I work with gals over 50, this is where things are starting to show up. Oh, I've got a woman right now whose feet are on fire. and, and she's working with her doctors to figure out what's going on. And a lot of it has been, she's been in an abusive relationship. She's also in a mental health profession where we have to give. She's raised 4 kids. I mean, all these things have added up where her body, it can only take so much. We have to take care of ourselves.
I'm wondering, because I haven't connected it, but recently they're saying that there's a new trend of, 50 something and 60 something year old people becoming divorced, right? And I wonder how much of it is connected to kind of just suppressing whatever was going on in that relationship, all right? There's a pressure of, okay, I need to be there for my kids, I need to show up for my kids, I need to take care of whatever's going on around the house. With this new, well, what seems to be new trend, people around this age group starting to divorce, have you seen anything that's connected between that and burnout and just feeling like they have not felt valued? Like, is there any connecting link there?
That's the thesis of my new book. Are we going to have sex or what? Yes, it is. Yes, because what happens, me, well, I mean, I've been married for 35 years and I still love him tremendously. I mean, we got it going.
Okay.
But I work with a lot of women who have so much resentment towards their partner. They swallowed their truth to keep the peace. They didn't speak up to say what they needed in the bedroom or in the boardroom or in the kitchen, wherever they might be. They are just not living authentically, comfortably in their skins. So 50, 60 hits. And also, I think what's happened, just a real quick side note, we have women, I'm so sorry, excuse me. We have women
Okay.
that are at the peak of their professions. And I'm 63, so I'm one of those women that I didn't just go not just, my mother was a stay-at-home mom. That's a hard job, but but I was overeducated and in the man's world at a time when there weren't a lot of women doing that. So this is my age group. We're coming through, and I have a far superior income at 63 than my mother, who got married in the 50s, had, or my grandmother, who got married in the 30s, had. So I think you're seeing something unique as an outlier in that we have women that are very educated and successful in their careers. Kids leave home and they look and go, I don't even know you, and I don't even know if I like you. And I'm out of here. It's probably not that easy. I think they probably go through some. I'm trained in a therapy called discernment counseling. 5 sessions. A couple decides if they're going to go into marriage counseling, get divorced, or just stay in the misery they're living in. It's very interesting, Stefan. So many of them choose to just stay in the misery they're living in instead of try to make things better. But so you have a woman, 50 or 60, she's thinking, is this all there is in life? Is this it? I'm not going to live my next 20, 30 years like this. I'm going to do what I've always wanted to do. Something along those lines. She's been in a roommate marriage for a number of years, or just kind of that business partner where we're not really connected. We're not really having sex. We're not really enjoying each other. We're just staying for the kids. Kids are gone now. Now I'm going to do something for me. And sadly, or not sadly, I mean, if I'm not here to judge. If that's what she needs to do, we'll celebrate it. If she wants to stay and work on that marriage, we'll celebrate that. But there's a lot of resentment that has built up over those years. That's a long time to live with someone where you're not connected and feeling supported, feeling seen, feeling loved, feeling respected. So and she's, I mean, that's really a heart chakra that is very discombobulated, probably her solar plexus as well. And that throat chakra is going to be very blocked. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to try and work on that marriage and try and get things back together. Not impossible. I've seen it happen. I've seen um, amazing things happen with those marriages, but she's got to want it and he's got to want it. And it's a matter of reconnecting. Because when she's been so dysregulated for all those years, meaning I'm in fight or flight, I'm just bracing to get through this stuff, or I'm numb and disconnected, pleasure is one of the first things to go offline. The frontal cortex is very selfish with energy, and it says, she's just trying to make it through the day. Pleasure's offline. All so their sex life might be absolutely dead. They might not feel like there's much to salvage there. But if they can get both nervous systems regulated and connected, and I'm not talking about sex, I'm talking about intimacy where they're connected, things can really change. Things
Right.
can really change. But she's got to get out of burnout and compassion fatigue, get those pieces taken care of. And he might need to also. Both systems have to regulate. But there can be hope.
Yeah. Looking at one of your newest books, In Pursuit of Soul Joy, um, you know, I was thinking about when you said when they're 50, 60 and asking themselves, "What is this it? What is it about the human spirit that leads someone, at 50, at 60, at 70 to say, is this all that there is?" Right? Because you kind of get into a routine, right? 30, 40, 50 years of just, I get up, take care of the kids, or I go deal with whatever, cook, breakfast, whatever it is that you get into a routine. So what leads to a person then saying at that point, okay, is it more than this? And then two, the second part of that question, is there a gendered distinction, right? Because I think, and I could be wrong, but I think men more than women are okay with a routine, if that makes sense, right? We're very methodical. We're very like, okay, we got to do this, right? And we're not, a lot of times we don't spend time thinking about, how's our soul and stuff like that. Not saying that we don't, but I think that we do it way less than women do. So, I just want to give you that two-part question.
Yeah. Well, the first part, what happens is very unique for women as they hit late 40s, early 50s, maybe even beyond. Our hormones change. Of course, we estrogen becomes she says hasta la vista, baby, and hits the ground running. And estrogen is not only for reproduction for women, it plays a huge part in our brain management. So it helps us have tolerance for years. We tolerate things. And I think it's beautiful in how we're designed because it helps us tolerate raising 3 or 4 kids, getting everyone taken care of, making sure that the hubby's okay. We have tolerance to do things that, I mean, I look back and think, how in the bejeebers did I do that? But I know I had an estrogen rich brain and that helped me get through some things. As we reach midlife, estrogen is depleted in our brain. Now, I'm on hormone replacements. I think it's very important. Um, but it's not just a hormone thing, it's a nervous system thing as well. But when the exciting thing about a midlife woman's brain, she is at the very point in her life to make changes because that tolerance is gone. I'm not going to tolerate this anymore. I'm done tolerate. And that's, some husbands will think she's lost her mind, and she has not lost her mind. She is finding herself perhaps for the first time in a long time, waking up to herself. So that explains what's happening to her brain in that time. And I think it's an exciting thing. I have been able to work with women and help them excavate their identity under all these layers of shoulds and masturbatory, as Albert Ellis, he's a theorist and counseling would tell us. I must do this, I should do this, I have to do this. That's not healthy for anyone. So she's able to excavate that. She's able to excavate all the titles, mom, bank director, whatever the titles might be, and really get to the woman, not that 20-year-old. We're not that 20-year-old anymore, but the woman we are at 50 plus, and really have a homecoming to live our very fullest, where our life is based on so many yeses, things that light us up, that we don't have to worry about the no's. There's not room for that. And before that brain change, our life was really full of a lot of no's, and our yeses
Mm-hmm.
weren't there. If
Mm.
Meaning we weren't able to say no, but we did it anyway.
Yeah.
I've looked at my calendar when I was younger and think, who in the Sam Hill did that to my calendar? It was
Mm.
me. I was doing things out of obligation. Don't do that anymore. So that's a really exciting thing for women in midlife. We used to be told, and I still have felt this some, you're old, Julie, just go disappear. You're so has been. No, I'm not. We are not after 50. We still have lots of life to give. Now, for
Mm.
a man, and of course, I raise boys, but I've watched them go through their lives. And I'm married to an amazing man. I have, and his feminine energy, he's really in touch with that part where that can be soft and gentle with me. Now he's
Mm.
a trooper. He's a state trooper for the state of Texas. Police. He's a policeman. He's a rancher. He's a farmer. To see him, he's this big, a typical Texan. This big. But he has such a softness about him that um, I know, and he's younger than I am. He's in his late 50s. I've seen a
Mm.
change, but he also just survived 3 rounds of brain cancer. So I
Mm.
think I can not discern which was which. Um,
Right.
but I have noticed there's, he's not as strong as he once was. He'll call the boys in to
Mhm.
do something he couldn't do before, but he
Right.
just accepts it. He doesn't, it's not a identity crisis for him. I think
Right.
women hit a bit of an identity crisis. Does that make sense? I
Mhm.
don't know.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. And, I think, because I've seen it as well, because I wonder to what extent, because I've been noticing that throughout this conversation, one of the things that is constantly challenged is like these mantras that we have, right? Of like, or sayings that we have when we say, well, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? Things like that. Whereas you just said that, when a woman reaches a certain age, like 50 and 60, like hormonally and, cognitively and like the body and mind is ready for change. So that I found that quite interesting and quite like different from what society has been saying for such a while, which is like the older you are, the more fixed in your ways you become. But a lot of it I'm starting to see is how you operate as an individual, right? Are you a person that is open to change in life, change in perspective? So a lot of it boils down to the things you value and how you bring those things into your life.
Absolutely. And one thing that's so important with long-term relationships, and now, shoot, just a long-term life, is novelty. We have to continue to add novelty and excitement into our life. And I mean, I think it's true in a intimate relationship with the couple, and I don't mean swinging from the chandeliers necessarily.
Mhm.
I mean, like my husband and I just got back from a month in Spain and just,
Mhm.
kicking about having a new adventure together, which is so rich and so fun. We
Mhm.
still, I mean, even last night as we were watching TV, which we sit together every night and we hold hands and we watch TV because we like that. But we were talking about
Mhm.
and reminiscing some of the castles we visited and some of the ocean views. But it's so important for us to have the mindset that we can still have novelty and adventures, and it's not over. There's lots of rich, lovely life to live, and
Mhm.
it's worth every effort to have a personal trainer, get take care of your body, eat right, but you got to get the mindset right too, and you've got to get that nervous system regulated. I we took the kids to Costa Rica I think in January, all the grandkids and our sons and their wives, and it was lovely. But my daughter-in-law had arranged for a zip lining adventure, which was
Hmm.
lovely. But I didn't want to be left out, but I am terrified of heights.
Yeah.
Terrified of heights. So I didn't want to be the old grandma, sitting back knitting, although I
Uh-huh.
love to knit. That's not wrong. I wanted to be in that adventure. So I'm
Uh-huh.
climbing up this tree, and this was not just one zip line, Stefan. This was multiple zip lines. It took us
Right,
hours to
right.
get through it. So my
Hmm.
sons, I raised some amazing men. They look back at me and they see me freaking out. I
Uh,
didn't want to call attention to myself, but I'm literally having a nervous attack. If I was shaking, I was sweating, I was
uh-huh.
crying, I wasn't bawling. I was just kind of tearing up. And my sons came to me. They were so sweet. And Cliffy held my hands and he said, Mama, it's okay. You don't have to do this if you don't want to do this. And he
Uh-huh.
looked me in the eyes. So what happened there? And Blakers, my other son, was like, Mom, it's okay. We love you. But
Hmm.
their mirror neurons helped me to regulate. They co-regulated with me. So I was able
Hmm.
to calm down and I was able to go on this adventure and not sit
Hmm.
back and feel like an old bag that couldn't get things done. I was willing to be scared and take a risk and allow mirror neurons of my children to help me get through that. And it was a blast. But I think that's something that we need to remember. It's okay to be afraid. I'm talking to us
Hmm.
older gals here. It's okay to be afraid. On the other side of that fear is often exactly what you need. I had a time of my
Right.
life that I did with my entire family, and we giggle about it as often as we can,
Uh-huh.
instead of just being, "Oh, I can't do that," and, set in my ways. I think it's how we approach life, as you had said a moment ago, being open to things.
It's interesting as you were talking about fear. I remember about a year and a half ago, we went to Coney Island, and there's a rise in Coney Island and stuff like that. And I think there's one ride where it's kind of like it's a little bit more open. Oh, that's the thing. One of the rides is like the box that you sit in, it kind of stays stationary. There's not much movement. And then the other one adds a little bit more thrill where it kind of sways back and forth. And so, myself, my wife and daughter and mother-in-law, we went on this particular ride in Coney Island. And I'm not sure why the selection was the one that sways back and forth. But, I got in and I was just like, okay, I'm telling myself like, hey, I'm afraid for my child, right? Like there's this fear, I want to make sure she's okay. But, if I was honest with myself too, a little bit of it was like, okay, existential in the sense of I might be a little bit afraid of myself as well, right? Even though for me, I think it was definitely greater for my 2-year-old child. But, it's those things that as human beings, we tell ourselves for years, right? I think for men, we tell ourselves, well, you can't feel this way. You got to shut down. You can't open up to anybody about what you're feeling, right? This is June and we're men's mental health month. And so it's one of those things where, I think men are getting better now at saying what they have an issue with or what they're feeling, but also, being a man now for 35 years, I realized that I have a difficult time even having the language for feelings. Like, if you ask me how I feel about something, I may tell you what I'm doing in the moment or what's
Right.
happening in the moment, but I actually don't find the right feeling word. Um, and so I imagine with some of your clients as well, for women, even though we do see women as being more tapped into their emotions, do you ever find where some women have a difficult time finding that emotion, right? That they're looking for a particular emotion or emotional response, and they don't know how to get there, or they don't know the word to access that particular response.
Oh, absolutely. Every client I've ever worked with, every student I've ever taught to be a counselor, and it's been thousands over the years. That's the very first place we start, identifying the emotion. And that's why somatic therapy is so important to me, and bioenergetics to I start with a body scan. Trying to teach her and him too. I've worked with thousands of males over the years, but trying to
Mhm.
teach them where they feel what. And they'll get irritated with me at first. Like, I don't know. I don't know where I feel what because it's so foreign. We think it's all
Mhm.
in our head that we're thinking it, but feelings are landing in our body. Serotonin is made in our belly. We've got brain cells. It's not
Mhm.
just in one place, it's in our body. So I try to teach them a full body scan approach with curiosity and self compassion because we want to take judgment and these rules of life into this, and that's not going to serve us. And there's rules about these feelings. Oh, well, that feeling's bad. I can't feel that. Any feeling is fine. It's what we do with it that can get us in trouble, but it's the feeling and understanding what it's trying to teach us is fine. So trying to teach them a full body scan from head, throat, chest, tummy, all the way down to tippy toes, approaching it with curiosity. What physical sensation am I feeling? What does that mean? Oh, every time I'm feeling angry, I feel it here. I mean, it's about relearning your whole self and taking all these rules away. It's fine to feel things. So many women have so much guilt about resentment. I call resentment a sacred feeling because if we listen to it, lay our hands on where we're feeling it and ask it, what are you telling me? What do I need? You're gonna get a lot of good information rather than trying to shut it down and going, "Oh, that's bad, I shouldn't feel that," and staying all up in your head. I like to think of it as thoughts happen here, feelings happen in our body. So when I'm working with a client and they say, "Oh, I'm feeling anxious," where in your body are you feeling that? I'm also trained as an EMDR therapist and an internal family systems therapist. So when an EMDR is a very, body based trauma um, theory or therapy that we use to help people work through trauma without re-traumatizing them. But I tell you, when we get into those really deep feelings, people can get very escalated. They can start dissociating. So it's very important to get he or she re-embodied and in this moment, so, I like to do the 5, 4, 3, 1. Yeah, tell me 5 things you see, 4 things you hear, 3 things you feel, 2 things you God, that one always misses me, but 1 thing you taste. But
Mhm.
just that simple of looking around the room and bringing yourself back into your body is very powerful, and that works. Stefan, if you happen to be upset with your daughter, I know you never would, but if you happen to be upset with her,
Mhm.
to look around the room and do that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, regardless
Mhm.
of what's going on for us, to get us back into this present moment is a very powerful
Mhm.
thing. And embodied, as we're doing that, then placing your hand. Maybe it was in your tummy. Okay, what's going on with my tummy? What's that trying to tell me? Such important practices. We walk
Yeah.
around with this thing. We might as well know what's going on with it. It's not all up in our head.
It's funny that you use that example of my daughter because just this morning, like around 7 this morning, she did something that I thought she was past. Like, she hadn't done it in months. And so I was just like really upset with her doing it this morning. Because I was like, oh, we did so much work to get her past this. And then she, went back to it. But I think it had more to do with the fact that um whatever activity she was doing this morning, I think she was just doing it for too long. So I think it may have led to her being a bit bored and then just kind of going back to an old habit.
Yeah.
So that was like, okay. And I always try to speak to my daughter in a voice kind of like right here, right? Like nothing that goes too elevated. Like and she has to be really just doing her own thing and not listening for me to be like, okay, we need to get a little bit higher now because you're not listening, right? But for me, it was just like holding that space that okay, she was a little bored and she went back into something that she had stopped doing, and so and to not see this as like necessarily a regression. It was just that
Right.
the environment was right for her to do the environment was right for her to do the wrong thing, right? And
Right.
so that was just interesting to watch this morning. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
so um, if introducing your book, you said you start by saying that you're not falling apart, you're operating past capacity. Uh, how often do women realize that they're actually operating past capacity, right? Because they just see everything as kind of like, hey, this is my responsibility.
Right.
I put this on myself. This is what I need to have to be able to do. So, however I'm feeling, I kind of need to push that down. But how often are they not realizing that they're operating past capacity?
I would say probably 99.999% of the time, they just know they feel off. They just know something isn't working. They just know, I I don't know I can live like this anymore. I mean,
Mhm.
they do it for so long, it just becomes the normal. Yeah, it becomes the normal. They're doing this, but this is what they really need to be doing. So this cognitive dissonance sets in after there's a bit of an allostatic load, after you've been doing it for a while. The interception has been lost. They're no longer listening to their body. So, they'll work through lunch and think, oh, am I hungry? I mean, they don't even know what their body's telling them anymore.
Mhm.
That past capacity is just as you said, she has taken on so many responsibilities. Not that she went and volunteered for it, but that it's just that's what it takes. I've got to keep these 3 or 4 lives, these 3 or 4 people alive, right? That I brought into this world. I have to run. I, I I run this office and I'm responsible to all these people. I have a marriage and I'm responsible to these people. My mom is or dad or both are aging and I'm responsible for them. Oh, I've got a brother that's doing XYZ. I'm the one who has to pick up those pieces. It's that feeling that if I don't do it, who will? Um and
Mhm.
and she's had some data that shows that to be true. It's not just something that she decided one day. There's also some inner child work to be done. I take them back and work on some schema, perhaps that they brought it through from childhood that are no longer true. That, like I said, I was raised in Fort Worth, Texas in the early 60s. And I know it wasn't just me and my parents were wonderful, but daddy, I remember him saying, I'll give you something to cry about, and and so I learned very early if I didn't cry or if I pleased him, I got
Uh-huh.
to stay in the tribe and got to live, Um,
I'm glad to know that that's not just a Caribbean thing, because in the Caribbean, parents would be like, "I'll give you something to cry for," like that. I'm glad to know that it's not it's not just a I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying
but
that yeah,
oh, honey, it is universal. I think that we could talk
yeah,
to anyone in any country and that would be a part of. And daddy was doing the best he could. And I'm not going to say I never said that to my kids. I did, when you know better,
yeah,
you do better. But
yeah,
I learned that if I performed and pleased, that's where people pleasing can come from.
uh-huh,
I got rewarded. And then I went into
mm,
elementary school and got rewarded for people pleasing, and then grad school, and then PhD school, and then at
uh-huh,
work, we really get rewarded for all these services. So before you know it, you're living past capacity
uh-huh,
where your nervous
mm,
system says, right here, Jules, this is your stop point. I say, forget that. I've got to do this because if I don't go above and beyond, if I don't please, I'm going to get fired. We're going to starve to death. I'll be homeless. I mean, the
uh-huh,
spiral, starts. So it
yeah,
really takes some unlearning and some actual courage. Celebrate these women that are working with me that are brave enough to look at their lives and discern and even um, dissect and deconstruct how they've built things and rebuild it back into a place that really feels like it's not past capacity. I just took, I'm a department chair at a university. I run counseling department, and I just took the department through, for counseling, it's called a K-CREP accreditation, which is
Mhm.
from, it's bad. I had to write a 2,000-page self-study,
Oh,
and then I had to rewrite the 60-hour curriculum, and I mean, just all these things on a
mhm,
deadline. You have to do it
mhm,
by this day, and I have all these students that are depending on me. I have all these faculty that are depending on me, and then not to mention the president and provost and my dean. Um,
mhm,
so where I'm going with that is I had not been in that state of dysregulation in some time because I've really purposely built a life where I'm good with it.
right,
And I remember my husband, whom I love very much, and we have a very good relationship. He touched me just to say, "Baby, you okay?" And I braced up like like he wanted
mhm,
something from me. And I caught myself and thought, "I'm dysregulated." I d
mm,
and I was able to take some steps to, do some thinking, do some meditating, get myself grounded again. But that's what we're working on helping her do. Life is gonna happen, and we're gonna get dysregulated, but to recognize it and be able to re-regulate, just like when I was able to accept my kids coming to me on that zip line and going, "Mama," I was able to down downshift some and, let those mirror neurons kick in. But a lot
mhm,
of women and men are living in a state of this overcapacity and have no clue that that's what they're doing to
mhm,
themselves, wondering at the end of the day, "Why do I feel like this?" And also, Stefan,
mhm,
rest doesn't help. They take a
mm,
vacation and they come right back and it feels just the same, and that
yeah.
confuses them.
Well, Julia, I really appreciate this, and I know we're at time, but for my audience, I do want to encourage you guys to take a look at her new books, "In Pursuit of Soul Joy," as well as "Are We Gonna Have Sex or What?" So definitely check those books out. That title is always funny to me, but it works. But definitely check those books out. I definitely think it's worth it. And Julie, if you have any last things that you want to say to our audience, encouragements, just before we go.
Yeah, no, please, take care of you. I've got 2 podcasts also that really, if a woman is thinking she's burned out, listen to Compassion Fatigue Cure. I've got all kinds of, techniques for her in there. But he is worth, you are worth the effort.
Well, again, Julie, I really appreciate this, and I think our audience definitely appreciates this. And I think, they're gonna have tools to walk away with, so that whenever they're feeling that burnout fatigue, then they'll know what to go back to. So really appreciate this. And for my audience, this is Stefan, just reminding you that choosing health is about choosing power, possibility, and purpose.